Hello, friends. Today we have a very special guest with us, a friend of ours, a friend to our show, Your Health Matters. And that would be none other than Dr. Dale Bredesen. Dr. Bredesen, thanks a million for joining me again. How you doing?
Thanks. I'm doing great. Thanks so much, Carl, for having me on.
Always a pleasure to speak with you. I go back to when we met the first time 7, 8 years ago in New York City at a Maria Shriver function, and I still have my autographed copy of The End of Alzheimer's that you gave me that day. And so this is, I think, our fifth time talking, actually, which is beautiful because we keep learning so much from you as you're a leader in the field of Alzheimer's and how to, let's say, make it, what's the word you used last? Alzheimer's is optional.
Right.
That's a saying you
Yes.
used last time, reversing it, the recode system. But you have a new book coming out on March 25th, 2025. March 25th, the new book called The Ageless Brain is coming out. I'm really excited about this. Can you tell us about this book?
Absolutely. So as you know, we were the first to reverse cognitive decline. We published that back in 2014. We've now completed one trial that was successful in improving people with cognitive decline. And we're in the middle of another one that'll be finished in October. And we have interim data showing that it's been very successful in improving people, not just slowing their decline, but actually improving their cognition. So of course, everyone has said, well, wait a minute. Okay, this is great for treating Alzheimer's, but what does everybody need to do to have a brain that functions throughout life? So the goal is protection and performance, those two things together. It's easy to get performance without protection. Things like Adderall, and they don't protect your brain in the long run, but they'll give you a short burst of some improved cognition. But we want to be able to capture both of these. We want to be able to have performance and protection for a lifetime. So that's what this book is all about, all the things that will drive brain aging. There's such interest now in anti-aging because you can measure it biologically with epigenetic markers, with telomeres and things like that. So you can actually show, here are things that actually will reduce your age. So the question is, how do we reduce brain aging and how do we keep people with a functional brain? Just the heartbreaking stories. You hear someone, I hear it all the time. We were saving money for retirement, and then one of the two spouses now is having trouble. They went to the doctor who said, oh, you're in the early stages of Alzheimer's. Forget it. You're going to die, et cetera. We had a guy recently, 53 years old, still has, children who are relatively young and doing well otherwise, went to a major university when he started having trouble, out of the blue, started having trouble with his cognition. And so the question is, how do we get the best opportunity for all of us to live our entire lives so that our brain spans, our length of time our brains are functioning well, equal our lifespans? Whether you're going to live to 90, 100, 110, whatever. If you're interested in all the increased longevity, great. But I often ask people, look, how many people now want to live to 140? And a bunch of hands will go up. Everyone's trying to get longer. I said, okay, and spend half of that time in a nursing home with dementia. Of course, all the hands go back down again. Nobody wants to outlive their brain span. And so what we want to do is to ensure that everybody has the best opportunity for a lifespan, a lifetime of functioning and protected brain. And this is an era of great change. We now have new blood-based biomarkers. So everybody can check. And in fact, I just checked my own. Everybody should know, we call this the brain scan. This is a set of blood markers, p-tau 217, GFAP, and NFL, that tell you the status of your brain. Just like the first time people started checking hemoglobin A1C. So you could say, you don't have diabetes yet, but you're on your way to having, you've got pre-diabetes. Or checking fasting insulin to say, you've got some insulin resistance. We're seeing the same thing now. We can look to see earliest changes long before you ever have full-on Alzheimer-related dementia. You can begin to see these biochemical changes, and you can do a lot about it. And frankly, it's easy in the earliest stages to change course. It's easy to get people to be optimal with their brain function. It's the tough ones are the ones that wait until late in the dementia stage.
Sure. Sure. So I'm curious to know, in the previous interview last summer, we were talking about, you made a statement of Alzheimer's being optional. And I was wondering, for example, you get early stage Alzheimer's. In fact, I remember years ago at the Maria Shriver luncheon, when I met you, you were talking about people who had done, I forget how long the study was. It's so much movement per day, so many days a week for so many months, and how many of them, especially the early stage of Alzheimer's, had reversed that. And perhaps they added nutrition in. I don't remember the protocol of that study, but what it showed me was it is possible to reverse in some cases. And I know in some of the instances in this study, people were like completely out of Alzheimer's.
Oh yeah.
No more. There was no sign, no, it's not there. And of course, since then, and that was a while ago, I know you have countless others like this. So how does this, let's start at the beginning. At what point in time should we be thinking about, when I have my own ideas on this, like as soon as possible, but at what point in time should we really start thinking about the brain health and brain span? Because I know when I was 20, that's the last thing on my mind. In fact, when I was 50, it was the last thing on my mind, and then I met you.
Yeah,
I
it's a
started
great
thinking
point.
about it.
This is such a good point. And there has been so much skepticism, but here's the analogy. In the past, it was thought that people had diabetes or they didn't have diabetes. And that's what the diabetes experts said, the endocrinologist interested in diabetes. And then, of course, along came hemoglobin A1C, oral glucose tolerance tests, fasting insulins, things like that. And people said, well, wait a minute, before you ever have diabetes, you have prediabetes. And before you ever have prediabetes, you have insulin resistance. And so now it used to be said, oh, you can't reverse diabetes. No, forget it. Well, now it's an everyday occurrence. Nobody raises an eyebrow when someone reverses their diabetes. And there's been, reports on this just recently. It's happening all the time now. And of course, the earlier you start, the easier. So the exact same thing is happening with Alzheimer's disease, and soon will be happening with Parkinson's. There are some now early markers of Parkinson's that are coming out. So we're moving toward a world in which everybody can see these things coming. And of course, wearables are helpful in that regard. We're moving toward a world in which you can see this coming, you can do something about it, you can reverse the problem. It's really not that surprising anymore. So when do you start worrying about this? Well, as you know, Alzheimer's has often been called old timers disease. And indeed, when I was training as a neurologist years ago, we would see people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. That was the Alzheimer's era. You don't see people in their 30s, 40s, and 50s. Well, now that we can look at the biochemistry, now that we have these early markers, and now that people have looked at more and more sensitive cognitive tests, you're not going to believe this, but this is a study that was published recently where they looked at people in the 18 to 25 age range, and they could see changes at that time. So this is not an old timer's disease. It's a disease that's diagnosed when you're older, but that starts literally in your teens and 20s in many people, and some people in their 30s and 40s. But the bottom line is it's never a time that's too early to optimize your brain function.
Well, that goes along with a lot of other things. We're going to head to a break in just less than a minute here. But for example, the listeners, people who listen, I know you're familiar. We've had Dr. Dorsey from U of R was on, Ray Dorsey, about a year ago.
Yeah.
And he was talking about early symptoms of Parkinson, let's say, right?
Yeah.
Then we have Dr. Pomerantz from San Diego, who's osteo specialist, and we're talking all these things, or a lot of these things: Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, possibly many other things. They actually have been going on for probably decades in many cases before diagnosis. With that said, folks, we got to head to break. We're with Dr. Dale Bredesen, best-selling author, an amazing human doing amazing work. We'll be right back after this short message.
Are you ready to take control of your health and feel your best? At Neuromotor Training, we specialize in helping you move better, think sharper, and stay independent for life. Our unique programs are designed to reduce your risk of falls, improve movement and mobility, boost memory and cognition, and enhance fine motor and multitasking skills. And here's the best part. We're the only clinic with a program proven to reverse osteoporosis with our state-of-the-art biodensity machine. Imagine stronger bones and a more confident you. At Neuromotor Training, your health and independence are our top priorities. Visit us at carlsterling.com or call 315-935-7488 to schedule your first session. That's 315-935-7488. Don't wait to take the next step toward a healthier, happier you. Neuromotor Training, where better health begins.
Welcome back, everyone. This is Your Health Matters here on News Radio 570, WSYR, also available on 106.9 FM. And today on Your Health Matters, we have a friend of our show. I would consider him now because you've been on a lot, Dr. Bredesen. Dr. Dale Bredesen is with us. It's so great to have you. So you've got the End of Alzheimer's book. You have I forget the exact titles of the next two, and then a new book coming out. So let's go through the series. We got End of Alzheimer's.
Right. Then the End of Alzheimer's program.
Program. Yep.
Program. Because so many people said, hey, wait a minute, we want to have more specific information. And that's the one I actually worked on with my wife, who's an integrative physician, and with Julie G., who's the founder of apoe4.info. And they put together a beautiful handbook, which is within that second book. Much more on this. The first book was about the idea, the concepts, the science, the how does this work. The second one was about what specific things. What do I buy when I go to the grocery store? What do I sign up for? What website do I go to? Those are the sorts of things. And of course, both of them have multiple stories of people who reversed their decline and did very well. The third one was called The First Survivors of Alzheimer's, because I really wanted to, that was kind of a labor of love. I really wanted to get these stories out because people talked about their own stories. What happened to them? They were told that they were going to die, and then they did very well and reversed their decline. And we've got now published recently, it's freely available online. We published a number of people who have sustained their improvement for over a decade, which was unheard of before. So always so happy to see people improve and stay improved. So that was the third book. And then people kept saying, well, okay, that's great, but what about for all of us? What can we all do to make sure that we have optimal thought thinking, optimal cognition, performance, and protection? And that's what this is all about. And, it's interesting if you go back to where this came from. Why is this so common? The number one cause of death in women in the UK today is Alzheimer's disease. Why is it that so many of us just accept the fact that as we get a little older, we're going to start to have more and more issue with thinking? And of course, again, as I said earlier, this happens to people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. They just think, well, it's not a big deal. And then in their 40s, they're told by their doctor, well, there's just nothing you can, this is just, normal aging. Don't worry about it. But it does affect your performance. It affects your performance at work and your decisions and all these sorts of things. So where this came from is called antagonistic pleiotropies. This is where throughout evolution, organisms, they'll select for performance over durability. That's the key. And so you end up with these nervous systems that are truly remarkable. I mean, a human being can store more information in their brain, at one brain, than in over 2,000 home computers. It's staggering. And so this selection makes you vulnerable to things over time. And that's what we studied in the lab and found, these things are things like chronic infections, inflammation, changes in your oral microbiome, and sleep apnea, leaky gut, and all these sorts of things that are the things that create, that they basically play on that vulnerability. So the reality is, if we look early, we get evaluated, we get on active prevention, we can virtually all of us, make our brain spans as long as our lifespans. That's the key for this book.
Yeah, that's just fantastic. I was thinking about this early looking into things early. Like, just for example, I had my fasting insulin measure for the first time last December because I never had that done before. And then somebody we had on the show mentioned it. And I'm going to go do it. So I did it. Oh, Robert Lustig was on. So he talks about get your fasting insulin. Well, you know what? I'm glad it was perfect. But what if it wasn't? I wouldn't have known. And then who knows, right? So glad that's under control. DEXA scan. Find out are my bones healthy? Because unless you show some symptoms of something, well, they're not going to order a DEXA scan. Well, guess what? We can get those things anyways. It might cost us a little out of pocket, but my personal opinion is if it's within my means, I'm going to go test because I want to know stuff and be preventative, proactive, preemptive, if you will.
It's worth it, and actually it'll save you a lot of money in the long run.
Oh, yeah, and quality of life. So let's look at now. We know, because we've been over this before and talking before, but just quick review. APOE4, the gene, we can have one or two copies or no copies, correct?
Right.
Okay, so this could lead to a genetic predisposition of sorts to maybe, manifesting Alzheimer's. But let's just say you have two copies of the APOE4. Which is going to drive the Alzheimer's more so? Is it the genetic factor? Is it the environment factor, like meaning what you put on your body, what you're around, what's in your body? Or is it a combination? Or is there any line of demarcation in those? And if you have two copies, can you avoid getting Alzheimer's?
You can absolutely avoid it, and we see it every day. And this is apoe4.info is the website that was founded by Julie G., who is an ApoE4 for herself. She actually began her clear symptoms in her late 40s. And in fact, her husband, who's an airline pilot, would come back from trips and he could tell the difference week to week in her performance and in what, her cognition. It was really striking and concerning, understandably, to her. She's now been on the protocol for over 12 years. She went from cognitive performance at the 35th percentile to the 98th percentile. She's truly remarkable. She's amazing, and she has sustained this for this 12 years plus, and doing great. So the bottom line is ApoE4. Although the statistics show that the 7 million Americans who are ApoE4 homozygous, two copies, 90% of them would otherwise develop Alzheimer's disease. And that was published just recently. If you are on active prevention or early treatment, you do very, very well. I mean, she didn't start until she already had MCI. That's the third of 4 stages for mild cognitive impairment. And she's done very, very well. If you have a single copy, and that is 75 million Americans, your chance of developing Alzheimer's is about 30% through your lifetime. If you have 0 copies, and that's 3/4 of the population, then you have a chance of about 9%. Now, it's not 0. Clearly, it happens all the time, but it is certainly a reduced risk if you don't have ApoE4 compared to those who are ApoE4 positive. But again, in no way is that your destiny. It's simply what this is doing. We studied this in the laboratory and published these data several years ago. ApoE4 is a pro-inflammatory gene. So it's wonderful when you are exposed to various things like pathogens, you've got to respond to them. But you have to remember the response is going to be a hyper response. And over time, it's going to cause you to make more amyloid, have more Alzheimer's in the long run. You're literally fighting infections. So tremendous amount you can do about it.
Yeah, that's really good news. Well, I have a lot more questions in the next 2 segments. But in the meantime, folks, we are talking with Dr. Dale Bredesen today. His new book called The Ageless Brain will be released on March 25th, 2025. And we'll talk about where you can buy that when we come back. But this is going to be, of course, a book that I can't wait to get my hands on. And if it's in audio format, I'm buying that too, because I like to listen and read at the same time. This is Your Health Matters on WSMR News Radio 570. We'll be back in a couple of minutes with Dr. Dale Bredesen. Are you ready to take your health and fitness to the next level in just minutes per day? I want to introduce you to the Power Plate. We have 5 Power Plates in my clinic, and it's a revolutionary fitness tool designed to transform lives and bodies. With its cutting-edge whole-body vibration technology, Power Plate activates warm muscles, increases circulation, and improves flexibility, all while reducing strain on your joints. So whether you're looking to build strength, boost endurance, or speed up recovery, Power Plate is the game changer you need. It's backed by scientific research. It delivers results quickly, making it the perfect solution for anyone from the elite athlete to the everyday fitness enthusiast. You can get a full body workout in just 15 minutes. So go to carlsterling.com, Carl with a K. Go to the sponsors tab, scroll down, click on Power Plate, and check it out. All right, we're back with Dr. Dale Bredesen talking about the new book coming out on March 25th called The Ageless Brain. Doctor, tell us more about what's in this book. What are you going through? Various things that maybe they're not in the other books or as an extension of information. What's in this book?
Yeah, great point. And so there are a couple things. Number one is, update on all the things from the other books. The second thing is, this is more focused on all of us. It's not just on getting Alzheimer's disease. So it's about what we all need to do to be sharper, to protect our brains, and to increase and improve performance. It's also about the history of, why is it this way, and why is it that you've had so much in drug discovery that has been a failure? Over 400 failed trials, over $40 billion have been spent to develop drugs for cognitive decline without any real significant success. The best ones now will simply slow decline a little bit. They don't improve you. So it's about where do we get off the rails? As you know, there's now a lot of discussion about fraud in Alzheimer's research. There's a whole book by Charles Piller on this called Doctored, and all about the fraud. And it's unfortunate. People have been out there trying to pass off things that do not work as things that, please buy this, please buy that, which is really unfortunate. So this is about how we all live. It's about the challenges we all face. And it's about the things that we're not told by our doctors and by our loved ones that can make a huge difference in terms of our brain span. So this is really a book about brain span, making sure that for all of us, we can go our entire lives with functional and protected brains. And we have, of course, stories of various people, what they did, what happens to the centenarians, but at the same time, what happens to the 20-somethings. So we have a part in there for 20-somethings. What do you need to be thinking about when you're in your 20s? What about when you're in your 30s? What about when you're in your 40s? And then all the way through to your 90s. And so I actually have a section in there of taking a couple of examples. Here's what can now be done, and seeing changes early so that we can avoid worrying about this. I'm from the boomer generation. My generation, the biggest worry was cognitive decline because, quote, there's nothing you can do about it. Well, that's completely changed now. Our daughters are in the millennial generation. And so as we've told them, you're in the first generation that does not have to worry about this problem. You can get evaluated. You can do the right things. You can do the wearables that are so helpful for us, seeing where your sleep stands, seeing where your heart rate variability stands. You can do a over-the-counter CGM and track your glucose. So helpful. And so, of course, soon there will be over-the-counter CKMs, continuous ketone monitors as well. You can track your oxygen status at night. I mean, these things are so helpful because the problem is, in the last century, things like pneumococcal pneumonia, you could wait for the symptoms and then you treat it with penicillin, amoxicillin, what have you. In the current century, what's happened is that we are all being compromised and ultimately dying of complex chronic illness. And the big problem with these is if you wait to have symptoms, you're relatively far along in the disease. As an example, if you wait to have symptoms of Parkinson's, you've lost about 80% of the dopaminergic input to your striatum. You don't want to wait till 80%. You want to get it much earlier. You may have seen the story about the woman who can smell Parkinson's years before you actually have symptoms. It's really surprising. And she has been proven correct by research that shows there is a mass spectrometric signature of Parkinson's before you ever have symptoms. Now, we should all be getting that so that we can make sure that we never have this. The same thing is now true with these blood tests I mentioned earlier. You can actually now get this over the counter, getabrainscan.com, so you can actually look and see, I just had mine checked. I should have it checked every 5 years or so. You can see, am I on the way to having this problem? As we talked about earlier, it's no different than checking your hemoglobin A1C and seeing if you're on your way to diabetes. All of these things are changing the world, and we go through all of these in the book with the goal of let's make it so that everybody can have a functional, healthy brain for their entire lives.
Yeah. It's funny. Just this morning, one of my friends and a patient client who comes here, he sent me a video about that lady. And that lady who could smell Parkinson's, her husband had Parkinson's.
And she smelled it years before he developed it.
She noticed, she described it as a foul odor that nobody else seemed to detect. But
she said it was musty.
Yeah, very way before any kind of non-motor like loss of smell symptom or anything like that. So very, very interesting.
Yeah, and if you look at what she was smelling, it was actually the signature in sebum. And so this, sebum is an antimicrobial secretion. So this is very analogous to what we see with amyloid. Amyloid is an antimicrobial peptide that your brain makes to protect you against these various mold species and bacterial species and spirochetal species and viral species. Well, sebum is what your body secretes to deal with these insults. So it's the same idea.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating? Now, is the getabrainscan.com, is getting that brain scan also like a cognoscopy, as you've referred to before?
It's completely complementary. So what happens is, here's the way it works. The brain scan part tells you it tells you your status. Are you on your way? Do you have anything to worry about? Or do you have a clean bill of health? Great to know. Very similar to getting a hemoglobin A1C or a fasting insulin. The cognoscopy, on the other hand, tells you why. So one is if, the other one's why. So the cognoscopy says, why are you at risk, or do you have things that are ongoing insults? So you'll be looking at, what's your methylation? How's your detox? Do you have ongoing systemic inflammation? Do you have ongoing problems with various infections or toxins or things like that? Do you have insulin resistance? That's one of the things it will reveal as well. So these two are very, very helpful to know together.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I was just talking with somebody, another author yesterday about insulin resistance, and I'm glad I got my fasting insulin checked.
Yeah.
And my blood sugar's been fine, and the A1C is all good. I work at that though, because it seems that the insulin and so many other chronic conditions are rampant, and I don't want to go down that road. I'm 64 just about, so I just don't want to go down that road. It's a crucial time for me, which should have happened 40 years ago. But I'm a leaving bloomer, but I'm finally blooming.
You're doing great. And the good news, you don't have to go down that road. So, you mentioned that absolutely metabolism is very important, and metabolic flexibility is arguably the most important piece of it. So, the brain is like a Prius. It has two things that fuel it, just like instead of electricity and high octane gas. What you want to have instead is glucose or ketones. And your ability to go seamlessly moving back and forth between using these is metabolic flexibility. And that really powers your brain beautifully. But for many of us, and for virtually everyone who has cognitive decline, even early cognitive decline, their brains are sputtering. They're not able to use glucose appropriately because they have some degree of insulin resistance. And when you have a high insulin, it actually prevents you from making ketones. So you're like a Prius that has got neither side going. And this is a real problem. You literally have a sputtering brain. So what we want to do, what we do repeatedly, is to make you insulin sensitive again and make you able to generate ketones as well. Now you're hitting on all cylinders.
Yeah. But that the term metabolic flexibility comes up a lot. And I just think that's like such an encompassing phrase because it's so important. Our metabolic, our fit health, our metabolic flexibility is so relevant in everything. We need to go to one more break before we come back for one more segment with Dr. Dale Bredesen, the best-selling author, the expert, the leader in the field on the forefront of research in the Alzheimer's arena and how to reverse it. This is Your Health Matters. My name is Carl Sterling. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Are you ready to strengthen your body, improve your bone density, and take control of your health? Meet biodensity, the revolutionary technology that transforms the way we build strength and fight against bone loss. With just one session a week, biodensity helps you safely apply high levels of force to your bones and muscles, stimulating natural growth and improvement. It's scientifically backed, non-invasive system proven to increase bone density, build type 2 muscle fibers, lower A1C, and reduce fall risks. Whether you're recovering from an injury, managing osteoporosis, or simply looking to maintain a strong, healthy body, biodensity is for you. Best of all, it's quick, efficient, and perfect for people of all fitness levels. Don't let age or health concerns hold you back. Experience the difference biodensity can make in your life. Visit carlsterling.com and go to the sponsors tab to learn more and schedule your session today. That's carlsterling.com. Biodensity, because stronger bones means a stronger you.
Okay, we are back on Your Health Matters here, News Radio 570 WSYR. We're with Dr. Dale Bredesen. He's joining us again, and it's really great to have you here, Doctor. Thank you again.
Great to see you as always, Carl.
Well, we've been talking many times here. We've spoken, and it just seems to me that I always say this because for me, this is how I really feel. This is a great time to be alive. Because there's so much going on. I love the fact that I can remember 60, 55 years ago and have a rotary dial phone and no answering machine, no cell phone, no voicemail, no fax, no computer at home, and black and white TV and 3 channels. Well, everything's different. So much is at our disposal now. But look at the health, the state of health. What's happened, and a lot of bad things have happened, but there are a lot of great things happening, and this leads me into this just state of hopefulness. I'm the consummate optimist anyways. I mean, people who know me, I always have a half glass full, even though this one's almost empty, right? So it's always half full, but that's because there are people like you out there doing these things, showing us what we can do. What a great time to be alive, right? And what are you seeing out there that makes you so excited about this work? I mean, you're doing a lot of the work, but would you agree with me first? This is a great time to be alive.
No question. And certainly in the field of neurodegeneration, where I've spent my last 50 years, this is a time of paradigm change, of shifting. This has been the area of greatest biomedical therapeutic failure. If you have Alzheimer's or ALS or frontotemporal dementia or PSP, CBD, just go right down the list. You're told, there's nothing we can do. You're going to die. We hear it all the time. And suddenly we're seeing now over the last 10 years, people reversing their decline, people getting better from these. Now we have some examples now. We have an example with posterior cortical atrophy with clear improvement, documented improvement. And, you have to go by the data. What actually can you document and prove? The famous physicist Richard Feynman said that the first you have to not fool yourself, and you're the easiest person to fool because, of course, you're not objective. You want things to work. You want your new ideas to be right. So you really do have to look carefully at the data. We're in the midst of a trial that will finish October 31st of this year. And we've done an interim analysis on the trial, and it's really striking. And it's statistically significantly better for people who go on the protocol we developed than to have standard of care for Alzheimer's disease. I mean, we've known this for years, but this randomized controlled trial is an important step in proving it and documenting it. So there are all sorts of remarkable developments that are taking place. And a couple of examples. When you have ApoE4, as we talked about earlier, you have a marked increase in your risk for Alzheimer's disease. If we could understand why, and we know a little bit about why this is, it's a pro-inflammatory gene, but if we could understand more about the biochemistry of this, then we should be able to develop targeted therapies for it. So we've worked on that for years. We now have a fantastic candidate that negates the risk. And so I'm very excited about getting that into clinical trials. This is with Dr. Vargas John, who's a superb medicinal chemist, and I've worked with for years, and he is at UCLA. And so I'm very excited about that particular candidate. We have candidates that will help to drive you toward the connection. We understand now more about connection versus protection. You're literally changing an entire program in your body when you are now starting to have some cognitive decline, even some brain fog. You're changing over from connectivity, just as you'd go from sleep to wakefulness. You're going from connection to protection. And that's why you're making these antimicrobial peptides. But when you're in that protection mode, you're not making new synapses. It's not supporting new learning and memory. You are sputtering, as we talked about earlier. You're putting your wherewithal, your resources into protection. We now have the first precision medicine department. This is a program, the Precision Brain Health Program, which is in the world, which is now at the Pacific Neuroscience Institute with Dr. David Merrill, Dr. Dan Kelly, Dr. Heather Sanderson is a consultant. Dr. Cyrus Raji is consultant for there. It's putting together a group that for the first time in an academic setting can address the neurodegenerative diseases, starting with cognitive decline, but looking ultimately at other things like ALS and macular degeneration and Lewy body disease and stuff like that. So we're very, very excited about that. We have the blood-based biomarkers that I mentioned earlier. These are new, so that you can now, for the first time, very simply get a blood test and see where do I stand. And you can use these then to follow. As you get better, these things improve. So again, just like improving your hemoglobin A1C, you're going to improve your blood-based biomarkers that you get through this, get a brain scan. So all these things are changing the landscape dramatically. There is a tectonic shift in the way we think about, prevent, recognize, follow all of these problems. And we can call them diseases, but long before they are diseases, they are propensities, just like you have insulin resistance. That's not really a disease, but it is a change in physiology. And that's what all of these things start as. So like never before, the armamentarium is huge and growing. Over the years, we've been told there's nothing you can do, but there's a tremendous amount you can do. And yes, this is a time of great progress.
Yeah, I just love what's happening in so many arenas with the research and the just having the data. Data is king. Yeah. I mean, when we have people come in here to my clinic, we're measuring all kinds of things. Some are some old standardized Berg balance scale, MOCA test, Stroop's test, a test I made up that's pretty cool, and a bunch of other things. But if we don't assess, then we're guessing. So now we can actually assess, get a baseline, and then move through, body composition, all these other things.
Yeah.
But the blood tests, all these other tests we can go through, the brain scan, the cognoscopy. is so great to have these things available so we can get a baseline,
Yes.
learn about ourselves, and go about some proper optimal intervention, if you will. So, Dr. Bredesen, the name of the book is The Ageless Brain. And for people out there, it's coming out on March 25th. That's in a couple of days here. So, where's the best place for them to buy the book and also maybe learn more about your work? And do you have a takeaway message for people?
Yeah, great. So you can buy it, anywhere books are sold. Barnes and Noble, Amazon, your local bookstore, anything you like. You can get this book, you can follow all the work that we're doing on Instagram, Dr. Dale Bredesen, on X, on Blue Sky. You can also follow it on Facebook. And you can get information at drbredesen.com. So there's so much we can all do. And please don't assume that your doctor is doing all these things, because unfortunately, most doctors are not doing what needs to be done yet. So, I would recommend for people, be an active participant. Your brain's function and your body's function are going to be most important to you. And therefore, there's with all these new developments, be an active participant, be involved, and rest easily knowing that things have never been better. There's a lot available that wasn't available even 5 years ago, and there is story after story after story of success. We're hearing these all the time, and so much we can do. So let's all work together to reduce the global burden of dementia.
I love it. This is just a lot of hope, man, because there's a lot going on, and the results, the data proves it all. The results are proving it all. And by the way, upstairs from me is my a good friend, Dr. Joseph Barry. Now, when you were around the first time on the radio show last year, was the two of you around with me,
Right.
and he says hello. He also is the only Recode practitioner here in town, folks. So keep that in mind if you're looking to go into the Bredesen Recode program. Dr. Joe Barry does that program. Well, Dr. Bredesen, thanks again. Good luck with the sale of the book. It's called The Ageless Brain, everybody. My name is Carl Sterling. This is Your Health Matters on News Radio 570 WSYR, also available on 106.9 FM. Remember to move your body and exercise your brain too every single day. And we'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.